The council chamber floated in the darkness of space, a massive ring of metal and glass that orbited the neutral world of Prime. Inside, representatives from hundreds of alien species sat in their designated seats, speaking in dozens of different languages through universal translators. The air hummed with tension. Ambassador stood at the center podium, his thin gray hands trembling as he gripped the edges. He was a species known for their peaceful trading networks that stretched across 12 star systems. His large eyes, usually bright with curiosity, were now dim with exhaustion and fear. "Please," said, his voice barely above a whisper, "I beg the council to reconsider. My people are dying." In the viewing screens behind him, images played on repeat: burning cities, empty colonies, massive dark ships hovering over lifeless worlds. 6 planets had gone silent in 3 months. 6 worlds where billions of once lived, worked, and raised their families. Now there was nothing but ash and silence. The Devourers had come without warning. No one knew where they came from or what they wanted. They simply arrived, surrounded a planet, and within days, everything living on that world disappeared. The ships would leave, and the planet would be stripped bare, like something had consumed every trace of life. "We never developed weapons," continued, his voice growing stronger with desperation. "We never needed them. We built shields, yes, but only to protect against asteroids and radiation. Against these Devourers, our shields last mere seconds. We have tried everything. We cannot stop them." The representative, a tall creature covered in thick armor plates, shifted in his seat. "The Empire sympathizes with your plight, Ambassador. However, our fleets are currently engaged in border disputes with the Coalition. We cannot spare the forces needed for such an operation." "The Coalition faces the same constraints," added another delegate, a being that looked like floating crystals arranged in a vaguely humanoid shape. "Our military assets are fully committed." One by one, the major powers of the galaxy made their excuses. The Union had internal security concerns. The Alliance was restructuring its defense forces. The Empire was in the middle of fleet exercises. Everyone had a reason why they could not help. Felt his hope crumbling. Then what should we do? Just wait for the Devourers to consume watch our families die? "We recommend evacuation," the said, his tone suggesting the matter was settled. "Abandon the colonies. Relocate your population to refugee stations. It is unfortunate, but it is the most practical solution." "Abandon 12 star systems," his voice cracked. "Abandon our homes, our history, everything we have built over thousands of years." No one answered him. Some delegates looked away. Others checked their data pads, already moving on to the next agenda item. The council had heard enough desperate pleas over the centuries. This was just another tragedy in a vast and often cruel universe. The session ended. Representatives filed out, speaking quietly among themselves. Some expressed genuine sadness for others simply wanted to return to their quarters. None of them offered real help. Stood alone at the podium, staring at the empty chamber. His assistant, a younger named, approached hesitantly. "Ambassador, there is nothing more we can do here," said softly. "Perhaps we should begin organizing the evacuation fleets." "Wait," said. "Give me access to the Council database, all member species. I want to see every civilization that has any military capacity." Brought up the holographic display. Hundreds of species scrolled past. Most were like the peaceful traders or explorers with minimal defense forces. The major military powers they had already contacted. Then one name appeared that made pause. "Earth," he read aloud. "Status, provisional member, military assessment." He trailed off as he read the warnings attached to the file. The humans had joined the Galactic Council only 20 years ago, barely a moment in galactic terms. They had achieved faster-than-light travel and immediately applied for membership, eager to meet other intelligent species. The Council had accepted them, but with reservations. The human file was marked with red warning symbols. Their planet's history showed over 300 documented wars. Their weapons development was classified as excessively advanced for their technological level. Several council observers had noted that human military tactics were unnecessarily brutal and showed disturbing creativity in the application of violence. "They are primitives," said, reading over his shoulder. "They have barely left their own star system. What could they possibly do that the great powers cannot?" Continued reading. Humans had no territory disputes with anyone. Their fleet was small, mostly exploration vessels and defensive platforms around there. But there was a note about something called the Vanguard Fleet, a combat group the humans had built despite Council suggestions that such weapons were inappropriate for peaceful space exploration. "They are our last option," said quietly. "Everyone else has refused. The humans have no conflicts to manage, no borders to defend. They might listen. Or they might refuse like everyone else," pointed out. "And even if they agree, what can one primitive species do? They have no experience with large-scale space combat. They have never fought anything beyond their own kind." Looked at the images of his burning worlds, then back at the human file. Something in those warning labels gave him a strange feeling. The Council was afraid of humans. Not openly, but the concern was there in every note, every observation. These humans had scared civilizations that had existed for millions of years. "Compose a distress signal," ordered. "Send it to Earth. Tell them everything about the Devourers. Tell them we need help. Tell them the galaxy has abandoned us." "Ambassador, is this wise? The humans are unpredictable, they might help," interrupted. "That is more than anyone else is offering." The message was prepared and sent through the faster-than-light communication network. It would reach Earth in hours. Had no idea if the humans would even respond. He had no idea what he might be unleashing if they did. In the empty council chamber stood looking at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Devourers were moving toward his. Somewhere else, an unknown species was receiving his desperate plea. He had done all he could. Now he could only wait and hope that humanity had something the rest of the galaxy did not. He had no way of knowing that he had just made the most important decision in galactic history. The peaceful universe that had existed for so long was about to remember something it had forgotten. War was not extinct, it had simply been sleeping. And Earth was about to wake it up. The alert came through at 300 hours Geneva time, but Fleet Admiral was already awake. He had been reviewing supply reports in his office at United Earth Command when the priority transmission arrived. The message was marked with the Galactic Council seal, but the sender was someone he did not recognize. Ambassador of the Confederation. Read the message twice. Then he read it a third time more slowly. By the time he finished, dawn was breaking over the Swiss mountains outside his window, painting the snow peaks gold and red. He pressed the communication panel. "Wake the command staff. Emergency meeting in 20 minutes. Full attendance required." The officers arrived still adjusting their uniforms, carrying coffee and data pads. Captain was the first to enter, his eyes sharp despite the early hour. Commander Sora followed, already reviewing something on her tablet. Within 15 minutes, the room was full. Displayed the message on the main screen. The room went quiet as they read. Images of destroyed worlds filled the display. Population statistics scrolled past, showing billions dead or missing. Maps showed the Devourer advance, system by system, moving steadily toward the. "They contacted the major powers first," said. "Everyone refused. Border conflicts, resource constraints, political complications, the usual reasons." Captain leaned forward. "So they came to us because no one else would help." "Correct." Switched to another screen showing humanity's available forces. Most of Earth's ships were scientific vessels, cargo transports, or diplomatic cruisers. The defense fleet around Saul was small and had never fired a shot in anger. Then there was the Vanguard fleet. 57 warships, built over the past decade against the wishes of several council members. Other species had politely suggested that humanity did not need such aggressive military assets. Earth had smiled, nodded, and continued building them anyway. The ships had been designed using lessons from every war humanity had ever fought, incorporating weapons systems that made alien observers uncomfortable. The fleet had been built for one purpose: to ensure that humanity would never be helpless again. After centuries of war on Earth, humans knew one fundamental truth. Peace was beautiful, but only the strong could choose peace freely. Commander Sora brought up tactical projections. The Devourers have 40 to 50 ships in their attack groups, based on reports. Our Vanguard fleet matches that number, but we have no combat data on the enemy. We do not know their weapons, their tactics, or their capabilities. "We know they are winning," Captain said quietly. He commanded the fighter wings, and his face was grim. "They have destroyed 6 civilizations that had defensive technology. Whatever they are effective." Medical Director spoke up from her seat near the back. "They estimate 3 weeks travel time at maximum FTL speed. That is 3 weeks while more people die. If we are going to help, we need to decide now." The room fell silent. Everyone understood what this meant. Earth had been part of the galactic community for barely 20 years. They were still seen as newcomers, primitives who got lucky with FTL technology. Some council members actively worked to limit human expansion, fearing what a species with such a violent history might do with advanced technology. If Earth sent the Vanguard fleet and lost, humanity would be seen as weak and foolish. If Earth sent the fleet and won, the galaxy would see exactly what humans were capable of when they chose violence. Either outcome would change everything. "What do the politicians say?" someone asked. Allowed himself a small smile. "I have not asked them yet. This is a military decision. We were given command of these ships to use our judgment in matters of defense and security. This qualifies." Captain stood and walked to the display showing the worlds. "My grandfather fought in the Pacific War. Before he died, he told me something I have never forgotten. He said the worst evil in the world is not the people who do terrible things. The worst evil is the good people who see terrible things happening and do nothing because it is not their problem." He turned to face the room. "They are dying. Their families are being slaughtered. They asked the powerful nations for help and everyone said no. Everyone had excuses. Now they are asking us, not because we are strong, but because we are the last option they have left." Commander Sora nodded slowly. "We built these ships hoping we would never need them, but we built them knowing that eventually someone would need them." Looked around the room, meeting each person's eyes. These were good people, trained warriors who understood what they might be sailing into. No one looked away. "All in favor of deploying the Vanguard fleet to assist the Confederation?" asked. Every hand in the room went up. No hesitation, no debate. "Then it is decided," began issuing orders. "Captain, prepare the carrier group. Commander Sora, I want tactical analysis on everything we know about the Devourers. Captain, get your fighter pilots ready. Chief Engineer, make sure every ship is at peak performance. Medical Director, prepare the hospital ships for casualties. Specialist, set up the electronic warfare systems." The room erupted into activity. Officers rushed out to begin preparations. Within hours, the shipyards orbiting Earth came alive with activity. The Vanguard fleet had been in standby status, ready to deploy on short notice. Now that notice had come. Crews boarded their vessels. Supplies were loaded. Weapons systems were tested and retested. The fleet's flagship, the UES Indomitable, powered up its massive engines. Around it, 56 other ships prepared for departure. News of the deployment spread across Earth within hours. The media exploded with opinions. Some called it heroic, others called it reckless. Politicians demanded explanations. Religious leaders prayed for the crews. Families said goodbye to loved ones, not knowing if they would return. In Geneva, sent a response to Ambassador. The message was simple: humanity is coming, hold on. He also sent a copy to the Galactic Council, letting them know that Earth was deploying military forces outside the Sol system for the first time in history. The response from the Council came within hours, a carefully worded message expressing concern and requesting detailed operational plans. Deleted the message without reading past the first paragraph. There was no time for politics. 48 hours after receiving the distress call, the Vanguard fleet departed Earth orbit. Thousands of ships of all sizes moved aside as the warships accelerated away from the planet, their engines blazing bright enough to be seen from the surface. Aboard the Indomitable stood on the bridge watching Earth shrink in the. Beside him, Captain was reviewing star charts, plotting their course to space. 3 weeks, said quietly. A lot can happen in 3 weeks. Yes, agreed. They might lose more worlds, the Devourers might disappear, the Council might sanction us for this. Are you worried? Thought about that? No, I am worried about what happens when we arrive. The galaxy is going to learn something about humanity that they hoped they would never need to know. What is that? That we are very, very good at war. The fleet jumped to FTL, and Earth's most formidable force disappeared into the stars, heading toward a war that would change the galaxy forever. The Vanguard fleet dropped out of FTL at the edge of the system on day 19 of their journey. Immediately, every sensor on every ship began screaming alerts. Contact, Commander Sora announced from her station, her voice calm despite what the screens showed. Multiple hostile vessels, counting, 47 Devourer ships surrounding IV, 3 transports attempting to flee the planet. Admiral moved to the tactical display. The Devourer ships were massive, organic-looking things that seemed to pulse with dark energy. They moved in patterns that looked almost lazy, circling the planet like predators playing with wounded prey. The 3 transports were running on damaged engines, leaving trails of venting atmosphere behind them. They are hurting them, Captain observed, his jaw tight, taking their time. One of the Devourer ships fired a beam of purple energy. It hit the rear transport, and the ship's shields flared and died instantly. The transport kept flying, but it was now defenseless. Distance to the transports, asked. 8 million kilometers in closing, Sara replied. Time until the Devourers destroy them. At their current pace, maybe 10 minutes, they seem to be enjoying this. Looked at the tactical situation. His fleet had 57 ships, the enemy had 47. Numbers were close, but humans had something the Devourers had never encountered before: experience with this kind of evil. All ships battle stations, ordered. Attack formation Delta. Target the ships closest to the transports first. Fighter wings launch on my mark. Across the fleet, alarms blared. Crew members who had been anxious for 3 weeks suddenly became focused. This was what they had trained for. This was why Earth had built these ships. Admiral, the communications officer said hesitantly, should we attempt to contact the Devourers, offer terms? No, his voice was flat and cold. They have killed billions. They do not deserve a warning. Captain's voice came through from the carrier UES Horizon. Fighter wings ready for launch. 200 craft prepared. Launch fighters, all ships weapons-free, fire at will. What happened next would be analyzed by military historians across the galaxy for generations. The human fleet did not slow down, did not broadcast demands, did not wait to be fired upon first. They simply opened fire with everything they had. Weapons that accelerated metal slugs to 3% of light speed fired first. The rounds were impossible to dodge at close range and carried enough kinetic energy to punch through starship armor like paper. 3 Devourer ships near the fleeing transports were hit before their crews even realized they were under attack. The rounds went through their hulls and out the other side, leaving massive holes that vented atmosphere and bodies into space. Then the missiles arrived, hundreds of them launched from every human ship, accelerating hard with fusion drives. Point defense systems on the Devourer ships began firing, trying to shoot down the incoming warheads. They destroyed many, but not enough. Dozens of missiles got through, detonating in brilliant flashes against alien hulls. And then the fighters arrived. 200 small craft, each piloted by a human who had spent years training for this moment, swarmed into the enemy formation. The fighters moved in ways that made no sense to computer-predicted flight paths. They dodged, weaved, and attacked in patterns that looked suicidal but somehow worked. Pilot led his squadron directly into the gap between 2 Devourer ships, firing his weapons at point-blank range before pulling up so hard that his ship's frame groaned in protest. Pilot dove under another enemy ship and released her entire missile payload into its unprotected belly. The Devourers finally began to respond. Their energy weapons, beams of purple-black energy that could melt through most shields in seconds, lanced out toward the human ships. The UES Defiant took a direct hit. Its armor boiled away, and internal explosions rippled through its hull. But the Defiant did not retreat. Commander, the ship's captain, diverted all power to engines and aimed his dying vessel at the nearest Devourer ship. "This is Defiant, ramming speed. It has been an honor." His voice was steady as his ship accelerated toward the enemy. "Defiant, break off," ordered, but he knew it was too late. The human frigate struck the Devourer cruiser at full thrust. Both ships exploded in a fireball that lit up the darkness. 1,400 people died in that instant, human and alien together. The human fleet did not slow down. More Devourer ships fired. The UES Valiant lost its main engine. The UES Storm lost half its crew to a direct hit. The UES Thunder went dark, all power systems failing. But for every human ship that fell, 2 or 3 Devourer vessels were destroyed or crippled. "They are breaking formation," Sora reported, and there was surprise in her voice. "The Devourers are retreating." It was true. The alien ships that had been so confident minutes ago were now scrambling to escape. They had never faced resistance like this before. Every species they had encountered fought defensively, trying to protect their shields and minimize casualties. The humans fought like they had nothing to lose, trading damage freely, accepting casualties as the price of victory. 20 minutes into the battle, the first Devourer ships jumped to FTL, fleeing the system. Others followed quickly. Within 30 minutes, only debris remained where the enemy fleet had been. "Ceasefire ordered, damage report." The numbers came in slowly. 6 human ships destroyed completely, 4 more damaged beyond immediate repair, 1,247 crew members dead, another 3,000 wounded. "The transports?" asked quietly. "All 3 are safe, sir. We got to them in time." Closed his eyes briefly. Over 1,000 humans had died to save 3 ships full of aliens they had never met, but those aliens were alive because of that sacrifice. "Captain, organize rescue operations in the debris field. Find any survivors. Medical director, prepare to receive wounded. Chief engineer, get repair teams on the damaged ships." The bridge crew moved to follow orders, but their hands were shaking. Most of them had never seen combat before. They had just fought and won their first battle, and the cost was higher than anything they had trained for. One of the transports sent a message. It was Ambassador himself, his voice filled with emotion. "Human fleet, this is Ambassador. We do not have words. You came. You actually came." "This is Admiral of the Earth Vanguard Fleet," replied. "You are safe now, Ambassador. Where is the next colony under attack?" There was a long pause. When spoke again, his voice was shaking. "System Velar 7. They attacked 2 days ago. But Admiral, you have lost ships. Your people have died. You should return home, let your wounded heal." "Ambassador," interrupted gently, "we came here to help you. We will not stop until the Devourers are gone or we are. Now please send us the coordinates." The coordinates came through. The human fleet set course for Velar 7, leaving behind the wreckage of their first battle. In the debris field, recovery teams worked through the night, searching for survivors and recovering the dead. The Galactic Council received reports of the battle within hours. The reaction was shock and horror. The humans had fought with a brutality that had not been seen in civilized space for millions of years. They had sacrificed their own ships, accepted terrible casualties, and still won decisively. Some council members called for sanctions. Others called for an investigation. A few simply sat in silence, realizing that they had made a terrible mistake. They had assumed that because humanity had not fought a war in space, they did not know how to fight. But humans had been fighting wars for their entire history. They knew exactly how to fight. And now the galaxy was going to learn what that meant. The war lasted 63 days. 63 days of jumping from system to system, fighting battles that left both sides bleeding, pushing the Devourers back one world at a time. The pattern became familiar. The Devourers would surround a colony. The human fleet would arrive. The battle would be brutal and short. The Devourers would retreat, taking their dead with them. And the humans would move to the next system, carrying their own dead in sealed cargo bays that were never quite large enough. But something strange was happening. Something that confused the Galactic Council observers who watched from a safe distance. The humans were not just fighting, they were helping. At Velar 7, after driving off the Devourer fleet, Captain organized teams to evacuate civilians from the damaged orbital stations. His crews worked for 2 days straight, pulling Frightened from wreckage and getting them to safety. When a child was found trapped in a collapsed section, 3 human engineers spent 8 hours cutting through metal to reach her. All 3 had been awake for 30 hours. None of them stopped until the child was safe. At the colony, medical director set up field hospitals on the surface after the battle. Her doctors treated wounded with advanced medicines and techniques. When supplies ran low, she ordered her ships to share their own medical stocks, even knowing it would leave the human fleet with less. At station, chief engineers' teams helped rebuild destroyed orbital facilities. They worked alongside engineers, teaching them repair techniques and sharing their technology freely. When an engineer asked why they were being so generous, simply said, "Because you need help and we can give it." The Galactic Council did not know what to make of this. Humans fought like demons, but they also showed compassion that the Council had not expected. They were warriors and healers at the same time. General of the Empire arrived in the 6th week to observe a battle. That had once been the most feared military in the galaxy, millions of years ago, before they evolved past warfare. Wanted to understand what made humans so effective. He watched the Battle of 4 from a safe distance. The human fleet faced a large Devourer force and expected standard military tactics. Instead, he saw something that made his blood run cold. The humans did not fight fair. Specialists flooded the enemy sensors with false signals, making the Devourers think the human fleet was in 6 places at once. While the enemy ships fired at ghosts, the real human fleet attacked from an unexpected direction. When the Devourers tried to regroup, the humans used a tactic called the hammer and anvil, something from ancient Earth warfare. Half the fleet pushed the enemy toward the other half, catching them in a killing zone. The Devourers lost 12 ships in 8 minutes. They jumped to FTL and never came back to that system. After the battle, requested a meeting with Admiral. The two met aboard the Indomitable, in its office overlooking the launch bays where damaged fighters were being repaired. "You fight like the ancients," said quietly. "Before my people learned restraint, before we understood that there were rules to warfare." "There are no rules when your enemy shows no mercy," replied. "The devourers kill everyone they encounter. We stop them with whatever works. But you also heal the wounded. You rebuild what is destroyed. You save civilians even when it puts your own people at risk." Looked confused. "How can you be so brutal and so compassionate at the same time?" Walked to the window and watched as a team of engineers welded a damaged fighter back together. "Because we remember what war costs. Every human on these ships knows someone who died in our old wars. We built museums and monuments to remember the dead. We teach our children what happens when violence becomes normal." He turned to face. "We do not love war. We hate it. But we are good at it because we learned every terrible lesson it taught us. And because we hate it so much, we work twice as hard to help the people caught in its path." Left that meeting deeply troubled. He reported back to the Empire that humanity was the most dangerous species he had ever encountered, not because of their weapons, but because they understood exactly how to use them. The battles continued. At Velar 12, the humans lost the cruiser UES to a surprise attack. 2,000 people died when the ship's reactor exploded. The fleet held a memorial service in space, with all ships broadcasting the names of the dead. It took 3 hours to read every name. At Velar 9, Pilot's fighter was damaged and she crashed on the planet's surface, deep in Devourer-controlled territory. A rescue mission was deemed too dangerous. Captain went anyway, leading 5 other pilots through heavy fire to pull her out. They lost 2 fighters but survived. At the itself, the final confrontation came. The Devourer command ship, a massive vessel 3 times the size of any human dreadnought, arrived with 30 escort ships. It positioned itself in orbit over Velar Prime, where 10 billion lived in terror below. The human fleet had 41 ships left. They were damaged, low on ammunition, and exhausted. Crew members had been at battle stations for weeks. Medical bays were full of wounded. Every ship showed scars from previous battles. Admiral studied the tactical display. A direct fight would be suicide. The command ship alone could probably destroy half his fleet. "Commander Sara," he said, "do you remember the Battle of Midway?" Sara looked up from her station and slowly smiled. "Second World War, Pacific Theater, 1942. Pull up the tactics. I want to try something." What they tried was audacious and insane. Specialists created a massive electromagnetic pulse using generators from 3 different ships. The pulse would blind the command ship's sensors for about 17 seconds. In that brief window, every in the fleet would fire at exactly the same point on the command ship's hull. The risk was enormous. If the timing was off by even a second, the plan would fail. If the pulse did not work, the fleet would be exposed and vulnerable. If they missed their target, they would have wasted their chance. Commander Sora calculated the odds and announced them. 23% chance of success. "Better than 0, said, "Execute." The pulse fired. For 17 seconds, the mighty Devourer command ship was blind. In those 17 seconds, 41 human ships fired every they had at a target area 3 meters wide. Over 500 rounds hit the same spot. The armor held for the first 100 impacts. Then it cracked. Then it failed. Then the rounds punched through into the interior of the ship. The command ship vented atmosphere. Internal explosions rippled through its structure. Emergency systems failed. The ship's commander ordered a retreat, and the massive vessel jumped to FTL, trailing debris and bodies. The escort ships followed. For the first time in their conquests, the Devourers had been beaten back from a. The human fleet remained in orbit over Velar Prime, battered but victorious. Below, 10 billion celebrated their survival. Admiral stood on the bridge of the Indomitable and allowed himself one moment of satisfaction before returning to the casualty reports. 14 ships lost. 3,891 crew members dead. The price of victory was written in blood. But they were alive. 3 months after the last battle, the Galactic Council convened an emergency session. The subject was simple and terrifying: what to do about humanity. The council chamber was packed. Every major species sent representatives. Security was tripled. Some delegates brought personal guards, despite weapons being forbidden in the chamber. The air was thick with fear and uncertainty. Admiral was called to testify. He arrived in his dress uniform, walking alone through corridors where aliens stepped back to let him pass. Some looked at him with gratitude, others with naked fear. No one could agree on what humans were anymore. He stood at the center podium, the same place where Ambassador had begged for help months ago. The council members watched him in silence. The representative spoke first. "Admiral, the council must address the human military presence in galactic space. Your actions have been concerning." "We saved the civilization," replied calmly. "You also displayed weapons and tactics that violate the spirit of the Galactic Peace Accords. You showed levels of violence that civilized species abandoned millions of years ago. We showed levels of violence necessary to stop an enemy that was slaughtering billions. Would you have preferred we let them die?" The chamber erupted in argument. Some delegates supported humanity. Others demanded restrictions. A few called for sanctions or even expulsion from the council. The debate grew heated until Ambassador stood and raised his hand for silence. "I would like to address the council," said. His voice was steady and clear. "My people are alive because of Earth. When the Devourers came, we asked the great powers for help. Everyone refused. They said they were too busy. The Coalition said it was not their problem. The Union said we should simply abandon our worlds." He looked around the chamber. "Only humanity answered our call. They sent their fleet knowing they might all die. They fought battles that cost them thousands of lives. They could have turned back at any time, but they stayed until the threat was gone. And between battles, they healed our wounded and rebuilt our stations and saved our children." His voice grew stronger. "You want to punish them for being too violent. They are violent because they had to be. Because violence was the only language the Devourers understood. But they are also kind, compassionate, and honorable. They are what we should all aspire to be." The council fell silent. Then the representative spoke again, more quietly. "What you say is true, Ambassador, but we must consider the future. Humans have shown themselves to be extraordinarily capable of warfare. What happens when they turn those capabilities toward conquest? What happens when they decide they want our worlds?" Had been expecting this question. He pressed a button on the podium, and images filled the screens around the chamber. The images showed Earth, but not Earth's military bases or shipyards. They showed memorial services. Thousands of people gathered in parks and stadiums, mourning the dead. Families holding photographs of loved ones who would never come home. Children asking why their parents had to die for aliens they never met. The images showed the names being read aloud, taking 8 hours to honor every single crew member lost. They showed the monuments being built, massive walls of stone carved with the names of the fallen. "You want to know what makes humans dangerous?" said quietly. "This is what makes us dangerous. We do not wage war because we love violence. We wage it because we hate what happens when good people do nothing in the face of evil." He pointed to the images. Every person in those pictures knew they might not come back. They came anyway. They fought knowing the cost, accepting it, because they believed some things are worth fighting for. That is what humanity learned from our violent history. That strength without compassion is tyranny, but compassion without strength is helpless. The chamber was silent, continued. "Your civilizations evolved beyond war by forgetting how to fight. You chose peace, which is admirable, but you made yourselves dependent on the idea that everyone would choose peace. When the Devourers came, you had no answer except to flee." He paused. "We evolved beyond war by remembering exactly what it costs. We built these ships hoping we would never need them. We trained these crews praying they would never see battle. But when someone needed help and everyone else looked away, we had the capability and the will to act. Gestured to the images of mourning families. This is our constraint. This is what stops us from becoming conquerors. Every time we choose violence, we see these faces. We remember these names. We carry this burden, and that weight keeps us honest. The council members looked at the images for a long time. Some were moved, others remained skeptical, but the debate had changed. The vote took 3 days. In the end, Earth was granted full membership in the Galactic Council and a permanent seat on the Security Council. The human fleet was officially recognized as a peacekeeping force. In exchange, Earth agreed to certain restrictions on weapon development and regular inspections of military facilities. It was a compromise, but it was fair. What the Council did not expect was what happened next. Within a month, 7 different civilizations quietly contacted Earth with requests. They wanted to learn. They wanted military training, defensive strategies, and help building their own protection forces. The galaxy had realized something terrifying. Peace only worked when everyone agreed to be peaceful. Evil did not negotiate. And sometimes, the only thing that stopped evil was the willingness to fight. The Empire sent General to Earth as an official liaison. He met with Admiral in Geneva, at a memorial garden dedicated to the fallen crew of the Vanguard fleet. "We were the galaxy's warriors once," said, walking among the memorial stones. "Millions of years ago we fought to protect the weak, but we grew tired of war and chose peace. We convinced ourselves that war was primitive, that violence was beneath us." He paused. "We forgot that sometimes violence is necessary." "Violence is never necessary," replied. "It is simply the least terrible option when all better options have failed. The difference is knowing when you have reached that point." Nodded. "Will you teach us? The want to remember what we forgot, not how to conquer but how to protect." "We will teach anyone who wants to learn," said, "but we will teach them everything, including the cost." In orbit around Saturn, construction began on a new facility. It was part military academy, part memorial, part warning. Humans and aliens would train together, learning not just tactics and strategy, but also history and ethics. They would see recordings of Earth's wars, visit simulated battlefields, and speak with veterans who had seen the horror firsthand. The goal was not to create warriors. It was to create people who understood when not to fight, and how to fight properly when there was no other choice. Captain took a position as one of the first instructors. Commander Sora joined the faculty, teaching tactical theory. Medical director helped establish trauma care protocols. Specialist worked on defensive systems that prioritized protection over offense. On Earth, public opinion remained divided. Some celebrated the fleet's return as heroes. Others protested, afraid of what humanity had revealed about itself. The debate raged in every media channel, every public forum, every dinner table conversation. In a quiet interview, specialists summarized it best. "We did not want to be the galaxy's warriors. We never asked for this burden. But if someone has to protect the innocent, better it is people who understand exactly what that protection costs. We have paid that price enough times to never forget." The story ends with Ambassador visiting the memorial garden on Earth. He places a mourning crystal at the base of the wall, a tradition for honoring those who died protecting others. The inscription on the wall reads, "They came when no one else would. They fought so others would not have to. They died so we could live. This is not humanity's victory. This is their burden, chosen freely so others might sleep safely in a dangerous universe." Stands in silence, reading the names carved in stone. Behind him, ships launch from Earth, heading to the training facility where humans and aliens will learn together. The galaxy has changed. The era of naive peace is over. In its place is something more realistic, more honest, peace backed by the willingness to defend it. compassion paired with capability, hope protected by the strong. Somewhere in deep space, a sensor array picks up signals that might be the devourers, or it might be something else. The galaxy is vast and dangerous. But now, when the darkness comes, the galaxy has an answer. Humanity taught them that sometimes the only way to protect peace is to be willing to fight for it. And if that fight must come, better to face it with eyes open, fully aware of the cost, and determined to pay it if there is no other way. The stars shine cold and distant above Earth. Ships patrol the trade routes. Families sleep safely in their homes. And in orbit, the memorial stones remember those who made it possible. Because that is what humans do. They remember, they mourn, they honor the fallen. And they stand ready to answer the next call for help, hoping it never comes, but prepared if it does.